Hey there, my name is LexC and thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but I'm so excited to get back into it. And here I am, fresh faced, sitting in front of the window to take advantage of this beautiful natural light. And I have a viewer question that I'm going to be answering in this video. The question is, how do you shake the fear of being able to sing in front of so many people? So if that is an answer that you are interested in hearing, keep watching, stay tuned. So one of my supporters asked me, how do you shake the fear of being able to sing in front of so many people? And long answer short, I'm always scared. I'm always terrified, but my desire to go after what I said I wanted to do is much stronger than the fear keeping me from doing what I said I wanted to do, if that makes sense. And honestly, I try to quell those fears by doing things like rehearsing, making sure that I'm practicing my songs, practicing my steps, practicing my breathing. And that really helps a lot with keeping me in a good headspace and controlling the fear, because there are so many different fears that run through your mind just before going on stage. So what you have to do is you have to think about what are some of the things that are causing me to be afraid, and you have to face those fears head on. You got to call each and every one of those fears out. So something that always scares me is, what if I forget my lyrics? And actually, I've forgotten my lyrics on at least 3 occasions that I can think of, and it's really not that bad, honestly. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, it happened, but it's not the end of the world. It is kind of frustrating because, you know, you've got one shot to convince people that you're a good artist. You've got one shot for people to listen to you, to see you, for you to present yourself as an artist to whatever audience that you're being in front of at the time, right? So it is a little nerve-wracking, like, dang, you want to make a good impression and not forget the lyrics, and you want it to be a flawless performance. But if there's anything I've learned being in this industry and doing live events, it's that something usually does go wrong, whether it's from my performance or people not showing up, people who I want to come support me, or something happens with sound or wardrobe malfunction. I don't get to look the way I want to look because maybe I didn't get myself together properly before the event. But there are just so many fears that go into you being afraid of, you know, performing in front of a large crowd of people. And honestly, something that's true for me, I would rather perform in a room with hella people versus performing in a room with like 5 to 10 people. Because for me, performing in more intimate settings is actually a lot scarier than performing in front of a bunch of people who I have less likelihood of bumping into each individual person. So I would rather be on stage in front of a lot of people versus being in an intimate small setting where I'm making eye contact with everyone and everyone sees me and they see every little thing that I'm doing. So that is actually more intimidating to me. But back to the main point that I want to make is, how do you stop yourself from being afraid of singing in front of people? You gotta identify those fears, right? So I'm going to go through a list of my fears, and while you're watching, while you're listening, I want you to also go through a list of your fears so that we can uncover what makes you afraid, and then we can tackle those things head on. So some things that I'm afraid of: forgetting my lyrics, putting on a bad show, running out of breath or not breathing properly so it sounds like I'm not performing my own song well. I worry about not looking good. I worry about appearing to be nervous. I worry about being stiff. What else do I worry about? Those are pretty much the main things. So, and I actually need to write these down because it would help going through all of these points if, you know, I write them down. So let's address that first fear of, and actually I'm not going to write it down. It's going to take too long. And I hope y'all can hear me over the lawnmowers in the background. I'm so sorry if it's distracting. Today is yard work day, so there are lawn care people leaf blowing down the street. But anyway, that first fear that I have, well, the broad fear that I have is putting on a bad show. that's really broad, that's really vague, that's not very specific. So you want to, if you have anything like that on your list, as far as a list of fears that you have for performing in front of people, if you have a really broad fear like that, well, then you need to break it down into smaller, bite-sized, more manageable, more realistic pieces. So for me, I don't want to put on a bad show. What does a bad show look like to me? A bad show looks like my hair is undone, my outfit looks nasty, my toes or my nails are undone. A bad show looks like forgetting my lyrics. A bad show looks like standing in one spot on stage. A bad show looks like not interacting with the crowd. It looks like I'm appearing to be nervous. So those are the things that define a bad show for me. So what you need to do on your list of fears is define what a bad show is. What does a bad show look like to you? What are some things that you're afraid of? Maybe you're afraid of people not showing, because that can be a bad show too, right? Like, people, forget about the audience who's there. What if the people that you invited are not there? Does that also say that this is a bad show because the people who I want to be here to support me are not here? And honestly, that's one of my fears. I want people to support me, but then I get nervous performing in front of people that I know. Because there's the likelihood that I have to go back and, talk to them about it or hear what they think about the show. And it's not a bad thing to hear what they think about the show. The real ones, the good friends, if you have good friends, they will give constructive criticism. They will give instructive criticism and tell you, you did really great here, or on this one part, you could have done better on here. So you actually need that support system at your shows to help you improve for future performances. But that is a real fear. Like, a bad show to you might look like, oh, everyone who I invited, no one's here, or I invited 10 people and only 2 showed up. Honestly, if you can get at least one person to show up for you, then that is a great thing. And if that person can show up, if you can consistently get one person to show up for however long your timeline is for someone consistently showing up to your shows, let that be a motivating factor. All right, next time I'm gonna get 2 consistent people showing up, whether it's the same 2 people every time or whether it's just 2 people showing up for you, period, bottom line. So again, define what a bad show looks like to you. If one of your fears is forgetting lyrics, how can you battle that fear? Practice, practice, practice. And there's a rule that I have for myself that I actually keep breaking every time I have a performance. I don't set aside proper rehearsal time, and I don't set aside proper practice. So practice as far as singing the song out loud and hearing how I sound, hearing what parts I'm naturally stumbling on or which parts I'm naturally having a hard time with breath control on. And also, so that's practice for me, right? You have to identify the things that fit your definition of what is a bad show. So I was explaining that to me, practice is the vocal aspect and rehearsal is the vocal and the physical movement, like the dancing, the showmanship, the stage presence. And where I often break my own rule is I tell myself, however long your set is, you need to like triple, quadruple, 5-6 times that number, and that's how long you should have practiced for. When you think about people like Beyonce, she practiced for Super Bowl. That was like what, a 15-20 minute performance. She practiced that for 8 months to a year. So if she is taking that long to prepare for that show, granted it is on a great scale and she does have a lot of moving pieces, more so than a new artist, but if we could take a page from Beyonce's book and really understand that you have to put in a lot of time and a lot of preparation before the actual presentation, take a page from her book and apply that to your own artistry and your own situation when you are trying to combat these fears of putting on a bad show, combating the fear of performing in front of a lot of people. If you're taking a page from Beyonce's book as an artist, then you should be putting in at least 3 times longer in rehearsal than what your actual performance time is going to be. And I would venture to say, let's do 10 times. So if you have a 15-minute set and you multiply that by 10, that means you need to practice for at least 150 minutes to perfect that set, perfect where you're going to breathe in the song, perfect when you're going to move, down the stage during certain parts of your song, perfect how you're moving, certain dance moves you might do, perfect a script that you might recite in between songs, or when you're introducing yourself, or at the end of your set when you're saying goodbye to the audience and you're saying who you are again and telling people where to follow you and things of that nature. So again, long story short, because this is kind of turning out longer than I wanted it to be, you have to identify the things that make you afraid of putting on a bad show. Identify what a bad show looks like to you, and then to combat, the fear of performing in front of people, you really just don't want to put on a bad show. So how can I prepare for my show so it won't be a quote unquote bad show? Practice your lyrics, practice your breath control, practice your movements, invite a lot of people. If a bad show looks like people not showing up for you, try to make sure that you're giving well in advance notice to people who you want to be there, and even people who you don't want to be there. Just spend your time inviting everybody. Cast a wide net so that you can get as many people as possible. And that's really how I combat the fear. I identify what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of forgetting lyrics, but that still ends up happening because I always end up psyching myself out just before a performance. And what you can also do is create a little routine for yourself the day before, going into the day of, excuse me, and even a few hours before your performance. So what I do is I make sure that I'm drinking plenty of water. I make sure that I am eating a good diet, because a bad diet will affect how well you're able to move on stage as far as your breath control and being able to have that stamina on stage. If you have a bad diet with a bunch of sugar and a bunch of fats, it's going to translate in your performance as you moving slow and losing your breath, because the diet will affect your stamina, FYI, if you didn't know. Also, if you're drinking a lot of sugary drinks, if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, those things are dehydrating you, so your vocal cords aren't going to be moist. So when you sing or when you rap, your vocals are going to come out sounding cracked, or they're going to come out sounding dry, and you're not going to be able to hit the notes that you want to hit, and you're not going to have the breath control that you want if you're eating badly and if you're drinking badly, if you're dehydrated. So make sure that the days leading up to your performance, you're drinking plenty of water. And then make sure that you are keeping yourself in a good, positive mental space and telling yourself nice things. And if this is hard for you to do, because if you're like me, my mind always thinks of worst case scenario, just make sure that what you can do, actually, I'm not going to say make sure. What you can do is make another list, write down positive things about yourself. And when you start having those negative comments come into your head, read that list, keep reaffirming to yourself, I'm great at what I do. I'm a good artist. I make good music. I'm going to have a great show. I'm going to have fun. I'm not going to worry too much about the movements, and I'm not going to worry too much about the lyrics, because I just want to have a good time and I want to put on a good show for these people. That's another thing that happens with me. I psych myself out and I think of everything that could go wrong instead of just focusing on having a good time and having a good show. So that's somewhere where I fall short of as well. If you struggle with that as well, then let me know in the comments, because I need to know that I relate. If you struggle with that, we relate to each other. You're not alone. But what ends up happening is I psych myself out about the performance before I get on stage. And then the things I psych myself out about, they're more likely to come true, like forgetting my lyrics. I keep telling myself, I don't want to forget my lyrics. I don't want to forget my lyrics. I don't want to forget my lyrics. But then I end up forgetting the lyrics. And so what you want to do is you want to speak positivity. You want to manifest the things that you do want to see. Talk about and think about the things that you want to happen on stage, and they will be more likely to come true. Especially if you write those things out, even more likely to come true. And that's going to help you, again, battle those fears, but also put yourself in a good mental space just before the show to make sure that you're putting on a great show and lessening the anxiety, lessening the fear that you have for performing. So that was a very long answer. If you made it to the end of this video, I'm so thankful to you for tuning in and learning for so long. But you did get the long answer short at the beginning. What you're really afraid of is putting on a bad show. So use these tips that I mentioned in this video to make a list for what defines a bad show for you. And then go on about taking action to lessen those fears by strengthening yourself in those areas that you worry about. So how do I shake being afraid of performing in front of people? That's how I do it. I identify what I'm afraid of and I figure out ways to combat it. And you can do the same thing. Once you do that, your shows are only going to get better and better and better. And then you can worry about enhancements to your shows versus fears. So I definitely thank the person who submitted this question. I'm so sorry I don't remember who submitted it, but thank you for interacting with me by giving me this question to address on my channel. And if this video helped you, if this audio, this sound helped you, if you're listening to it, give me a thumbs up, give me a heart, like it, subscribe or follow me, and turn on notifications so you'll be notified each and every time I put up a new piece of content, whether that's audio on Anchor or Spotify podcasts or on YouTube. So thanks so much for tuning in. My name is LexC. Until next time, peace.